Commercial airline pilots are trained to identify aircraft. They spend thousands of hours studying silhouettes, flight patterns, and the behavior of everything from small private planes to massive cargo jets. So when multiple pilots report seeing something in the sky that defies classification, investigators take notice. Between 2017 and 2020, more than 50 witnesses came forward with accounts of a creature unlike anything in aviation manuals. It appeared near one of the busiest airport systems in the United States. It had wings but wasn't a bird. It had a humanoid shape but wasn't in an aircraft. Some saw it hovering. Others watched it chase their vehicles. A few claimed it stared directly at them with glowing red eyes. The sightings clustered around Chicago's O'Hare International Airport and the surrounding suburbs, creating one of the most documented cryptid cases in modern American history. Chicago sits on the southwestern shore of Lake Michigan, a geographic position that has shaped its identity for nearly 2 centuries. The city sprawled outward from its origins as a trading post, eventually becoming the transportation hub of the Midwest. Rail lines, highways, and shipping lanes all converge here. But perhaps nothing defines modern Chicago more than its airports. O'Hare International opened in 1944 as Orchard Field, a manufacturing site for Douglas C-54 military transports. After World War II, the city transformed it into a commercial airport. By the 1960s, O'Hare had become the busiest airport in the world. Today, it handles over 80 million passengers annually and ranks among the top 5 busiest airports globally. The facility sprawls across more than 7,600 acres, with 8 runways and 4 terminal complexes. Aircraft take off or land every 45 seconds during peak hours. The constant roar of jet engines has become background noise for residents in nearby suburbs like Des Plaines, Park Ridge, and Rosemont. The surrounding area mixes dense urban development with pockets of forest preserve and wetland. The Des Plaines River winds through the western suburbs. Nature trails and wildlife refuges provide green corridors amid the sprawl. These spaces attract waterfowl, deer, coyotes, and the occasional great blue heron. Birdwatchers frequent these areas, familiar with every species that migrates through the region. When something appears that doesn't match any known bird, these observers notice immediately. They know the difference between a sandhill crane and a turkey vulture. They can identify a bald eagle from a mile away. So when witnesses began reporting a massive winged figure that didn't behave like any bird species, their testimonies carried weight. The first modern sighting occurred on a humid evening in August 2017. A woman was leaving her shift at O'Hare, walking across an employee parking lot toward her vehicle. The sun had set an hour earlier. Overhead lights cast harsh pools of yellow across the asphalt. She was alone, tired, thinking about the drive home. Then she heard a sound above her, a deep whooshing noise like fabric being pulled through air. She looked up and froze. A dark shape passed directly overhead, no more than 20 feet above the light poles. It was enormous, with wings that stretched wider than any bird she had ever seen. But it wasn't a bird. The torso was too thick, too human in proportion. The head was clearly defined, sitting atop broad shoulders. The legs dangled beneath it, bent slightly at the knee. For 3 or 4 seconds, she watched it glide silently toward the terminal buildings. Then it banked left and disappeared into the darkness beyond the runway lights. She stood motionless for several minutes, trying to process what she had just witnessed. When she finally reached her car, her hands were shaking too badly to insert the key. She didn't report the sighting immediately. Who would believe her? But she mentioned it to a co-worker a few days later. The co-worker listened with widening eyes, then admitted she had heard a similar story from another employee. Someone else had seen something strange near the cargo facilities. The stories began to circulate quietly among airport staff. Then, in September, a mechanic working the night shift at a maintenance hangar saw it. He was outside, performing a routine inspection on ground equipment when movement caught his eye. He turned and saw a figure perched on the roof of an adjacent building. It was crouched like a gargoyle, perfectly still, silhouetted against the glow of the city skyline. The wings were folded against its back, but even folded they extended beyond the width of its body. The mechanic grabbed his flashlight and aimed the beam upward. The light caught two eyes that reflected red, like an animal's eyes in headlights, but larger and more intense. The creature didn't flinch, it simply stared back at him for what felt like an eternity. Then it spread its wings, a slow, deliberate motion, and launched itself into the air. The mechanic estimated the wingspan at 7 to 8 feet. He watched it rise above the hangar and vanish into the night. He filed a report with airport security, though he suspected nothing would come of it. The sightings accelerated through the fall and winter. In October, 2 United Airlines employees saw the creature circling above the control tower just before dawn. They were heading to their shift when one of them pointed upward. The creature was banking in wide circles, silhouetted against the pink and orange sky. They watched it for several minutes. It made no sound. The wings moved in slow, powerful strokes, then held steady as it glided. One of the employees was an amateur photographer. He always carried a camera in his work bag. He fumbled to get it out, hands shaking from cold and excitement. By the time he raised the viewfinder, the creature had flown toward the eastern horizon, disappearing into the glare of the rising Sunday. He managed to take 3 photos, but they showed only a dark speck against bright sky. Useless as evidence, but enough to convince him he hadn't imagined it. In November, a baggage handler spotted it, gliding low over the tarmac near Terminal 3. He was driving a luggage cart when he saw the shadow pass over him. He looked up, and there it was, no more than 15 feet above the ground. It glided in complete silence, wings outstretched and motionless. The handler stopped the cart and got out. He stood there watching as it moved across the tarmac toward a row of parked aircraft. It passed between 2 Boeing 737 seconds, wings nearly brushing the tail sections. Then it gained altitude and flew over the terminal building. He estimated the wingspan at nearly 10 feet. He knew aircraft dimensions by heart. He loaded luggage every day. He understood scale. This was no bird. He filed a report with his supervisor, who told him to keep it to himself. The airport didn't need rumors spreading among the staff. In December, a TSA officer saw it perched on a light pole outside the international terminal. She was taking a cigarette break, standing near the employee entrance, when she noticed the pole swaying slightly. She looked up and saw the creature gripping the top of the pole with what appeared to be large taloned feet. Its wings were folded tight against its body. It was completely still, like a statue. She watched it for at least 2 minutes. She thought about calling security, but worried they would think she was losing her mind. Then a plane roared overhead on final approach. The noise was deafening. The creature spread its wings, pushed off from the pole, and launched into the air. It flew straight up, climbing rapidly, and disappeared into the low clouds. The officer finished her cigarette with trembling hands. She decided not to mention it to anyone. Each witness described the same basic features. Massive wings, dark in color, either black or deep brown. A humanoid body, upright and muscular. A head that seemed too large for the body, with prominent eyes that glowed red when light hit them. Some witnesses noted a beak-like protrusion on the face. Others insisted the face looked more human, with a flattened nose and wide-set eyes. Most agreed on the height, estimating it at around 6 feet tall when standing. The wingspan estimates ranged from 7 to 10 feet, far larger than any bird native to the region. Airport authorities dismissed the reports as misidentifications. Great blue herons can have wingspans exceeding 6 feet. Sandhill cranes are even larger, with wingspans reaching 7 feet and standing over 4 feet tall. In low light conditions, witnesses could easily misjudge size and shape, but the descriptions didn't match. Herons and cranes have long necks and thin legs. They fly with slow, deliberate wing beats. The creature people were seeing had a compact torso, proportionally short legs, and a flight pattern that seemed almost effortless. It glided more than it flapped, sometimes hovering in place before shooting forward at startling speed. One witness, a pilot with over 20 years of experience, saw it keeping pace with a taxiing aircraft. He estimated its speed at roughly 30 miles per hour, sustained without visible effort. No heron or crane could do that. By early 2018, reports were coming in from beyond the airport itself. Residents in Des Plaines, just northwest of O'Hare, began seeing the creature in their neighborhoods. A man taking out his trash late one evening saw it perched on his garage roof. A woman driving home from work watched it cross the road in front of her car, wings spread wide, gliding at windshield height. She slammed on the brakes, convinced she was about to hit it, but it cleared her vehicle with inches to spare and disappeared over the houses. In Rosemont, a suburb directly adjacent to O'Hare, multiple witnesses reported seeing it near the Donald E. Stevens Convention Center. The building sits less than 2 miles from the airport. On a clear night in February, a security guard saw the creature land on the roof of the convention center and remain there for nearly 10 minutes. He watched through binoculars as it shifted position, moving along the roofline like it was surveying the area. When a helicopter passed overhead, heading toward O'Hare, the creature launched itself into the air and flew directly toward the aircraft. The guard lost sight of it in the darkness. The pattern was unmistakable. The sightings clustered around transportation hubs and flight paths. O'Hare remained the epicenter, but reports also came from Midway Airport on the city's southwest side, and from neighborhoods near the Lake Michigan shoreline, where small private planes often fly. Some researchers theorized the creature was drawn to aircraft, either out of curiosity or territorial aggression. Others suggested it simply preferred the open spaces around airports, where it could hunt without interference. The wetlands and forest preserves near O'Hare support healthy populations of rodents, rabbits, and waterfowl. A large predator could thrive there, especially one capable of flight. The theory gained support when a wildlife biologist reviewed the sighting locations. She mapped each report on a chart of the Chicago area. A clear pattern emerged. Most sightings occurred within a 5-mile radius of O'Hare, concentrated along the Des Plaines River corridor. This area contains several forest preserves, including the Ned Brown Preserve and the Catherine Chevalier Woods. These preserves form a green belt that stretches for miles, providing cover and hunting grounds. The biologist noted that great blue herons and sandhill cranes use these same areas during migration. But she also acknowledged that the size and behavior reported by witnesses didn't match any known species. She suggested the possibility of an unknown large raptor, perhaps a species driven from its natural habitat by development or climate change. But even she admitted this was speculation. No raptor on Earth matches the description witnesses were giving. The sightings also occurred along specific flight paths. O'Hare has 8 runways oriented in different directions to accommodate wind conditions. Planes approaching from the east follow a path that takes them over Lake Michigan, then inland across densely populated neighborhoods. Many witnesses reported seeing the creature near this approach corridor. One resident of Park Ridge, a suburb directly under the flight path, saw it 3 separate times. Each sighting occurred in the evening as planes descended toward the airport. The creature would appear from the direction of the forest preserve, flying parallel to the incoming aircraft. It seemed to pace them, matching their speed and altitude. The witness, a retired engineer, estimated the creature was flying at about 150 miles per hour during these encounters. This speed is consistent with small aircraft on approach, but far beyond the capability of any bird. Even the fastest bird in level flight, the white-throated needletail, can only reach speeds of about 105 miles per hour. Another witness, a school teacher living in Des Plaines, reported an even stranger encounter. She was in her backyard one evening, grilling dinner, when she heard a loud whooshing sound overhead. She looked up and saw the creature flying directly toward her house. It was no more than 30 feet above the roofline, wings spread wide. She could see details she would never forget. The wings had visible feathers, or something like feathers, arranged in layers that overlapped like shingles. The body was covered in short, dark fur or feathers. She couldn't tell which. The legs were thick and muscular, bent at the knee and tucked slightly under the body. The feet had long curved talons, clearly visible even in the fading light. But the most disturbing feature was the head. It was disproportionately large, with a pronounced brow ridge and deep-set eyes. The eyes reflected her porch light, glowing bright red. The mouth was partially open, and she could see something inside, teeth or a beak. She wasn't sure. The creature passed directly over her and continued toward the airport. She stood frozen for several minutes after it disappeared. When she finally went inside, she locked all the doors and windows. She didn't sleep that night. In March 2018, an off-duty police officer had an encounter that would become one of the most detailed accounts on record. He was driving north on River Road, a major thoroughfare that runs parallel to the Des Plaines River, when he noticed something large moving through the trees along the riverbank. It was dusk, still enough light to see clearly. He slowed his vehicle and pulled into a parking area near a forest preserve entrance. The creature emerged from the tree line and stood at the water's edge. The officer estimated it was about 50 yards away. He could see it clearly. It stood upright on two legs, slightly hunched forward. The wings were folded against its back, but still visible, dark and leathery in appearance. The head turned slowly from side to side, as if scanning the area. Then it turned and looked directly at his vehicle. The officer described the eyes as unnaturally bright, a vivid red that seemed to glow from within. He felt an immediate sense of dread, a primal fear that made him want to leave. He reached for his phone to take a photo, but his hands wouldn't cooperate. By the time he managed to raise the camera, the creature had spread its wings and lifted off. It flew low over the river, wings moving in slow, powerful strokes, and disappeared into the trees on the opposite bank. The entire encounter lasted less than 2 minutes, but the officer would later say it was the most unsettling experience of his career. Word of the sightings began to spread online. A researcher named Lon Strickler, who runs a website dedicated to paranormal phenomena, started collecting reports. His site, Phantoms and Monsters, became the primary clearinghouse for winged humanoid sightings in the Chicago area. Witnesses who were reluctant to go to authorities felt more comfortable submitting anonymous reports to Strickler. By mid-2018, he had documented over 30 separate sightings. The descriptions remained consistent: large, dark, winged, humanoid, red eyes. Some witnesses added new details. A few reported hearing a low clicking or chirping sound when the creature was nearby. Others described a foul odor, like rotting meat or sulfur. One witness claimed the creature made eye contact with him, and he felt an overwhelming sense of sadness, as if the creature itself was suffering. Strickler began conducting in-depth interviews with witnesses. He developed a standard questionnaire to ensure consistency in the information gathered. He asked about weather conditions, time of day, duration of the sighting, distance from the creature, and any sounds or smells associated with the encounter. He also asked witnesses to describe their emotional state during and after the sighting. A pattern emerged. Nearly every witness reported feeling intense fear during the encounter, often accompanied by physical symptoms like rapid heartbeat, shortness of breath, and trembling. But several witnesses also described a secondary emotion, one that surprised them. They felt pity or sadness when looking at the creature, as if it were in distress or pain. One witness, a nurse who saw the creature perched on a tree in a forest preserve, said she felt the creature was lost, displaced from somewhere it belonged. She couldn't explain why she felt this way. It was just an overwhelming sense that the creature didn't want to be here. Strickler also collected reports of indirect encounters. These were cases where witnesses didn't see the creature itself, but experienced something unusual that might be connected. A woman walking her dog near the Des Plaines River reported that her dog suddenly became terrified, pulling on the leash and whimpering. The dog refused to move forward, staring at something in the trees. The woman saw nothing but heard a sound like heavy fabric flapping in the wind. She dragged her dog back to the car and left. The next day, she returned to the same spot in daylight. She found large scratch marks on the bark of a tree, about 7 feet off the ground. The marks were deep, as if made by something with significant strength. She took photos and submitted them to Strickler. A wildlife expert examined the photos and said the marks were consistent with a large bird of prey, possibly an owl or hawk. But the height and depth of the scratches suggested something much larger than any owl native to Illinois. Another witness reported finding unusual feathers near O'Hare. He was walking through a wooded area adjacent to the airport when he noticed several large black feathers on the ground. He collected them, thinking they might be from a turkey vulture or crow, but when he examined them at home, he realized they were far too large. The longest measured nearly 14 inches from tip to base. Turkey vulture feathers rarely exceed 10 inches. He sent photos to several ornithologists. None could identify the species. One suggested they might be from a California condor, but condors are not found anywhere near Illinois. The feathers remain unexplained. The witness still has them, stored in a plastic bag in his basement. The sightings weren't limited to nighttime. In April 2018, a construction worker saw the creature in broad daylight. He was working on a high-rise building in downtown Chicago, about 15 miles from O'Hare, when he spotted it circling above the Willis Tower. The tower stands 1,450 feet tall, one of the tallest buildings in the Western Hemisphere. The creature was flying at roughly the same altitude as the observation deck, around 1,350 feet. The worker watched it through binoculars for nearly 5 minutes. It made wide, lazy circles, occasionally flapping its wings but mostly gliding on thermal currents. Other workers noticed it too. They pulled out phones and cameras, but by the time anyone managed to focus and zoom, the creature had descended and disappeared into the urban canyons between buildings. Skeptics argued the downtown sightings could be explained by large birds of prey. Peregrine falcons nest on several Chicago skyscrapers, including Willis Tower. But peregrines are much smaller, with wingspans rarely exceeding 3.5 feet. Even a large red-tailed hawk, the biggest raptor commonly seen in the area, has a wingspan of about 4 feet. The creature people were describing dwarfed these birds. Measurements based on known reference points suggested a wingspan of at least 8 feet, possibly more. No native bird matches that description. The only birds in North America with comparable wingspans are California condors and trumpeter swans, neither of which are found anywhere near Chicago. In May 2018, a particularly disturbing encounter occurred in the suburb of Tinley Park, about 20 miles southwest of downtown. A couple was driving home late at night when they saw the creature standing in the middle of the road. They slammed on the brakes. The creature stood there, unmoving, wings partially extended as if ready to take flight. It was directly in their headlights, no more than 30 feet away. The husband later described it as at least 6.5 feet tall, with a body that looked almost human but covered in what appeared to be dark feathers or fur. The face was the most disturbing part. It had large, forward-facing eyes that glowed bright red in the headlights, and a pronounced snout or beak. The mouth was partially open, revealing what looked like rows of small, sharp teeth. The couple sat frozen in their car, too terrified to move. After what felt like minutes but was probably only seconds, the creature turned its head toward them, stared for a long moment, then spread its wings and lifted into the air. It flew directly over their car, close enough that they heard the rush of air from its wings. Both of them later reported feeling physically ill after the encounter. The wife experienced nightmares for weeks. The husband became obsessed with finding an explanation, scouring the internet for similar reports. The Tinley Park sighting differed from most others in one significant way. The creature had been standing on the ground. Most witnesses saw it flying or perched on elevated structures. Seeing it standing upright on two legs reinforced the humanoid nature of its body. The husband, a former Marine, said it stood like a person, with shoulders back and head upright. The legs were powerful, with thick thighs and prominent knees. The feet were large, with 3 or 4 toes visible, each ending in a curved talon. He said the stance reminded him of pictures he had seen of prehistoric creatures, dinosaurs or pterosaurs. But it also looked eerily human, enough to trigger a deep, instinctive fear. The couple tried to rationalize what they had seen. Could it have been a person in a costume? But who would stand in the middle of a road at midnight wearing a costume? And how could a person fly? The wings had moved with too much power and control to be mechanical. They considered the possibility of a hoax involving hidden wires or some kind of pulley system. But the road was in a residential area with no overhead structures. There was nowhere to attach wires. They reported the incident to the Tinley Park Police Department. An officer took their statement, but seemed skeptical. He suggested they had seen a large bird, possibly a heron or crane, startled by their vehicle. The couple insisted that what they saw was not a bird. The officer noted their statement and told them to call if they saw it again. They never did. But others in Tinley Park did. Over the next month, at least 4 more people reported seeing a large winged creature in the area. One witness saw it perched on the roof of a shopping center. Another saw it flying low over a residential street. A third saw it standing near the edge of a retention pond, as if it were hunting. The reports suggested the creature was spending time in Tinley Park, possibly establishing a temporary territory. But by July, the sightings in that area stopped. The creature either moved on or became more cautious. As summer arrived, the sightings continued unabated. Witnesses reported encounters at parks, along highways, and in residential neighborhoods. A bicyclist saw it perched on a water tower in Des Plaines. A jogger saw it gliding over the lakefront trail near Montrose Harbor. A rideshare driver saw it swoop down over his car on the Kennedy Expressway, close enough that he instinctively ducked. The driver pulled over and called the police, but by the time an officer arrived, the creature was gone. The police report listed the incident as an animal sighting, no further action taken. Some researchers began drawing parallels to other cryptid sightings. The Mothman, a winged humanoid creature reportedly seen in West Virginia during the 1960s, shared many characteristics with the Chicago sightings. Witnesses in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, described a large creature with glowing red eyes, a humanoid body, and massive wings. The Mothman sightings preceded the collapse of the Silver Bridge in December 1967, an event that killed 46 people. Some paranormal investigators believed the creature was an omen, a harbinger of disaster. When the Chicago sightings began, a few theorists suggested the winged humanoid might be a similar warning, but no major disaster followed. O'Hare continued operating without incident. No bridges collapsed, no planes crashed. If the creature was a harbinger, its message remained unclear. By the end of 2018, Lon Strickler had collected over 50 reports. The witnesses came from all walks of life: airline employees, police officers, construction workers, teachers, students, retirees. Some had backgrounds in aviation or wildlife biology. Others had no special training but were credible, consistent, and deeply shaken by what they had seen. Strickler organized a small team to investigate the sightings. They conducted interviews, visited locations, and tried to find patterns. What they discovered was both fascinating and frustrating. The creature appeared with no predictable schedule. It could be seen multiple times in 1 week, then not at all for a month. It showed no preference for specific weather conditions. Sightings occurred in clear skies, overcast conditions, rain, and even light snow. It appeared at all hours, though most sightings occurred between dusk and midnight. One investigator suggested the creature might be nesting somewhere in the forest preserves around O'Hare. Several expeditions were organized to search the wooded areas along the Des Plaines River. They found deer trails, evidence of coyotes, and the usual assortment of bird nests, but nothing that could explain a 7-foot-tall winged humanoid. No large nests, no unusual droppings, no signs of a creature capable of flight at that scale. The lack of physical evidence frustrated researchers. Not a single photo clearly showed the creature. Every image was either too dark, too blurry, or too distant to be conclusive. Witnesses consistently reported that when they tried to photograph it, the creature would move or disappear before they could focus. Some suggested this was evidence of supernatural ability. Others argued it was simply bad luck and poor lighting conditions. In 2019, the sightings began to spread beyond the Chicago area. Reports came in from communities along the Illinois-Wisconsin border, from the suburbs of Milwaukee, and even from rural areas downstate. A farmer near Joliet saw a large winged figure circling his barn at dawn. A truck driver on Interstate 55 saw something massive glide across the highway just north of Bloomington. The pattern suggested the creature, or creatures, were highly mobile, capable of traveling long distances. Some researchers theorized there might be multiple entities, a small population rather than a single individual. Others believed it was one creature with a large territory, possibly migrating seasonally like some bird species. The possibility of multiple creatures raised new questions. If there were several, where were they coming from? Were they breeding somewhere in the region? A cryptozoologist from Michigan traveled to Chicago to investigate. He spent 2 weeks exploring the forest preserves around O'Hare, looking for evidence of nests or roosting sites. He found nothing conclusive. He did find several large depressions in the ground in Catherine Chevalier Woods, areas where vegetation had been flattened as if something heavy had been resting there. He also found more of the unusual feathers, scattered in small clusters near the Des Plaines River. He collected samples and had them analyzed by a laboratory. The results were inconclusive. The feather structure was consistent with avian species, but the size and pigmentation didn't match any known bird. The lab technician noted that the feather barbs were unusually thick, suggesting adaptation for strength rather than insulation. The cryptozoologist also interviewed local residents who lived near the forest preserves. Many reported hearing strange sounds at night. One woman described a sound like a low moaning or groaning, almost human but not quite. She heard it several times over the course of a month, always between midnight and 3 in the morning. It seemed to come from the direction of the woods. Her dog would bark and growl when the sound occurred, pacing nervously around the house. Another resident reported hearing loud splashing sounds from the river at night, as if something large was moving through the water. He went to investigate once and saw ripples spreading across the surface, but the moon was behind clouds, and he couldn't see what had caused them. These indirect encounters suggested the creature was active at night, possibly hunting or patrolling its territory. But it also raised the possibility that witnesses were only seeing a small fraction of the creature's activity. For every person who saw it flying or perched, how many times did it move through the area undetected? The forest preserves are vast and largely empty at night. A creature could roam freely without ever encountering a human. The sightings might represent moments when the creature made a mistake, revealing itself accidentally, or perhaps moments when it didn't care about being seen. In September 2019, a witness captured what might be the clearest evidence yet. A man was filming planes landing at O'Hare from a park near the airport when he noticed something moving against the sky. He zoomed in and recorded about 15 seconds of footage, showing a dark, winged figure gliding in the distance. The video is grainy, shot at maximum zoom, but it clearly shows something with broad wings and a compact body. Analysis of the footage suggests the object is much larger than any bird. Frame-by-frame examination shows the wings moving in a slow, deliberate motion, inconsistent with the rapid wing beats of a heron or crane. The video was uploaded to YouTube and quickly went viral, accumulating hundreds of thousands of views. Skeptics argued it could be a remote-controlled drone or a large bird filmed at an angle that exaggerated its size. believers saw it as validation of everything witnesses had been reporting. The Chicago sightings continued into 2020, though at a reduced frequency. Some researchers speculated that increased awareness and media attention had made the creature more cautious. Others suggested it had simply moved on to a different area. A few witnesses reported sightings during the early months of the COVID-19 pandemic, when air traffic at O'Hare dropped dramatically. With fewer planes in the sky, the creature may have felt more comfortable venturing into areas it had previously avoided. One witness, walking through an empty parking lot at O'Hare during the height of lockdown, saw it perched on top of a terminal building in broad daylight. He described it as enormous, at least 7 feet tall, with wings that draped down the side of the structure like a cloak. It remained there for several minutes before launching itself into the air and flying south toward the city. By the end of 2020, the number of reports had dwindled to a handful per month. The creature, whatever it was, seemed to have moved on or gone into hiding, but the mystery remained unsolved. No credible explanation had emerged. Wildlife experts pointed to large birds, but the size and behavior didn't match. Drone technology couldn't account for sightings that occurred before drones were widely available, or for encounters where witnesses were close enough to see anatomical details. Hoaxes couldn't explain the consistency of reports across dozens of independent witnesses. Mass hysteria seemed unlikely given the credibility of many observers and the specificity of their accounts. Some researchers turned to folklore for answers. Thunderbirds, massive bird-like creatures from Native American mythology, were said to inhabit the Great Lakes region. Legends described them as powerful spirits capable of creating storms and carrying off large animals. Could the Chicago sightings be a modern manifestation of these ancient stories? Others looked to cryptozoology, suggesting the creature might be an unknown species, a relic population of something thought to be extinct, or perhaps a new mutation adapting to urban environments. A few paranormal investigators proposed interdimensional theories, arguing the creature might be slipping in and out of our reality through some kind of portal. The Thunderbird connection intrigued several researchers. Native American tribes throughout the Midwest and Great Plains have stories of giant birds with supernatural powers. The Illini tribes, who originally inhabited the Chicago area, spoke of powerful winged beings that could control the weather. They were both feared and respected, seen as messengers from the spirit world. European settlers recorded encounters with massive birds in the 1800s. A famous photograph from 1890 allegedly shows cowboys standing next to the corpse of an enormous bird with a wingspan exceeding 15 feet. The photo has never been authenticated, and many believe it to be a hoax or misidentification, but stories of giant birds persisted throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries. Sightings were reported from Texas to Pennsylvania, often near rivers and lakes. Some modern sightings share similarities with the Chicago encounters. In 1977, 2 boys in Lawndale, Illinois, reported being attacked by giant birds. One boy was allegedly lifted off the ground and carried several feet before the bird dropped him. The incident was investigated by police and attracted national media attention. Skeptics dismissed it as a fabrication or misidentification of large turkey vultures. But the boys and their families insisted the story was true. The birds they described had black bodies, long curved beaks, and wingspans of at least 10 feet. The description matches many of the Chicago reports. Another historical parallel comes from West Virginia. The Mothman sightings of 1966 and 1967 bear striking resemblance to the Chicago encounters. Witnesses in Point Pleasant described a creature over 6 feet tall, with glowing red eyes and enormous wings. It was seen near an abandoned TNT plant, flying over the Ohio River and standing on rooftops. The sightings continued for over a year, culminating in the collapse of the Silver Bridge. Some investigators believe the Mothman was an omen, a warning of the impending disaster. Others think it was a misidentified sandhill crane or barn owl blown off course during migration. But like the Chicago sightings, the consistency and credibility of the witnesses made simple dismissal difficult. The link between the creature and disasters, or at least significant events, intrigued paranormal researchers. They searched for patterns in the Chicago sightings, looking for correlations with accidents, crimes, or other unusual occurrences. Some noted that a small plane crash occurred near DuPage Airport in 2019, about 15 miles from O'Hare, just weeks after several sightings in that area. Others pointed to a series of power outages in day planes during the winter of 2018, coinciding with increased creature activity. But these connections were tenuous at best. Small plane crashes happen regularly. Power outages are common in winter. Finding meaningful patterns in random events is a classic example of apophenia, the tendency to perceive connections where none exist. Still, some witnesses remained convinced the creature was trying to communicate something. The off-duty police officer who saw it by the Des Plaines River said he felt the creature was aware of him, not just in a predatory sense, but in an intelligent, deliberate way. He described feeling like he was being studied, assessed. The sensation lasted throughout the encounter, and for days afterward. He found himself thinking about the creature constantly, wondering what it wanted, why it had appeared to him. He considered the possibility that it was trying to warn him of something, but no disaster followed. His life continued normally. The experience left him with more questions than answers. The absence of physical evidence remains the biggest obstacle to solving the mystery. Without a body, bones, feathers, or even clear photographs, mainstream science has little to work with. The sightings are treated as anecdotal curiosities rather than legitimate zoological phenomena. But for the witnesses who saw the creature up close, the experience was undeniably real. Many describe it as life-changing, forcing them to reconsider what they thought they knew about the natural world. Some became obsessed with finding answers, joining research groups and attending conferences on cryptozoology and paranormal phenomena. Others simply wanted to forget, disturbed by the memory of those glowing red eyes and the unnatural silence of something so large moving through the air. O'Hare continues to operate as one of the busiest airports in the world. Millions of passengers pass through its terminals each year, most unaware of the strange sightings that occurred just outside. The forest preserves along the Des Plaines River remain popular with hikers and birdwatchers. Life goes on. But every so often, someone looks up and sees something they can't explain. A dark shape against the twilight sky, wings spread wide, hovering for just a moment before vanishing into the night. And the questions remain. What was it? Where did it come from? Is it still out there, watching from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself again? Airport employees still talk about the sightings, though usually in hushed tones. Many fear ridicule or professional consequences if they speak too openly. But in break rooms and parking lots, the stories continue to circulate. New employees are warned to be careful when working night shifts. Keep your eyes on the sky. If you see something unusual, don't assume it's a bird. Some employees refuse to work alone in remote areas of the airport after dark. Others carry cameras, hoping to capture the evidence that has eluded everyone else. A few have left their jobs entirely, unable to shake the fear instilled by their encounters. The sightings have also affected the surrounding communities. Real estate agents in Des Plaines and Park Ridge report that some buyers ask about the winged creature before making offers on homes. Parents warn their children not to play outside after dark. Dog walkers avoid the forest preserves at dusk. The creature has become part of local folklore, a modern myth that exists somewhere between belief and skepticism. Most people don't talk about it openly, but almost everyone has heard the stories. Lon Strickler continues to collect reports through his website. The flow of new sightings has slowed dramatically since 2020, but they haven't stopped completely. In 2021, a maintenance worker at O'Hare saw something large and dark fly past his third-floor window. In 2022, a pilot reported a near miss with an unidentified flying object while on approach to runway 10 liters. The object was dark, roughly the size of a small aircraft, but with an organic shape and movement pattern. Air traffic control had nothing on radar. The pilot filed a formal report. The FAA investigated and found no explanation. In 2023, a photographer setting up equipment at a forest preserve saw the creature perched in a tree. He managed to take one photo before it flew away. The image shows a dark silhouette against branches, wings partially visible, but the resolution is too low to make out details. It could be a bird, it could be something else. Strickler estimates he has collected over 70 reports in total, spanning from 2017 to the present. He believes the actual number of sightings is much higher, possibly in the hundreds. Many witnesses never report what they saw, either because they fear ridicule or because they convince themselves they were mistaken. Strickler has interviewed dozens of witnesses personally. He finds them credible, consistent, and genuinely disturbed by their experiences. Many express frustration that no one believes them or that their accounts are dismissed as hoaxes or misidentifications. They know what they saw. They know it wasn't a bird or a drone or a person in a costume. But without physical evidence, they can't prove it. The lack of physical evidence remains the central problem. In an era when almost everyone carries a camera in their pocket, why hasn't anyone captured a clear photo or video? Some researchers suggest the creature is more intelligent than people assume, deliberately avoiding detection. Others point to the difficulty of photographing anything in low-light conditions, especially something moving at high speed. Most sightings occur at dusk or after dark, when visibility is poor and camera performance suffers. Witnesses report that the creature often appears suddenly and disappears quickly, giving them little time to react. By the time they fumble for their phones, it's gone. There have been attempts to set up surveillance. In 2019, a group of amateur researchers installed trail cameras in several locations around the Des Plaines River. They left the cameras running for 3 months, checking them weekly. The cameras captured thousands of images of deer, raccoons, coyotes, and various birds, but nothing unusual. No giant winged humanoids, no unidentified creatures of any kind. The researchers expanded their efforts, adding more cameras and covering a wider area. They ran the project for over a year. The results were the same. Either the creature wasn't using those specific areas, or it somehow avoided the cameras. One researcher suggested the creature might be sensitive to the infrared sensors used in trail cameras, detecting them and staying away. But this level of awareness would require significant intelligence, far beyond what any bird possesses. Some witnesses have tried to return to the location of their sighting, hoping for a second encounter. Few have been successful. The Des Plaines schoolteacher who saw the creature fly over her house went back to the same spot at the same time of day for weeks. She never saw it again. The O'Hare mechanic who saw it perched on the roof returned to the maintenance hangar every night for a month. Nothing. The creature, if it follows any pattern at all, seems to appear randomly, without warning or predictability. This randomness makes it nearly impossible to study or document. The scientific community remains skeptical. Without physical evidence, there is nothing to analyze or study. Eyewitness testimony, no matter how credible, is not sufficient to establish the existence of an unknown species. Misidentification is always a possibility. The human brain is wired to find patterns and make sense of ambiguous stimuli. In low light, at a distance, a large bird can look much bigger than it actually is. Fear and adrenaline can distort perception and memory. These are well-documented psychological phenomena, but they don't explain every case. They don't explain the witnesses who saw the creature up close, in good lighting, for extended periods. They don't explain the consistency across dozens of independent reports. They don't explain the physical traces, like the unusual feathers and the scratch marks on trees. A few scientists have expressed cautious interest. A biologist at Northwestern University, who specializes in avian evolution, reviewed some of the reports. He noted that the description of the creature's flight mechanics, particularly the ability to hover and glide with minimal wing movement, is unusual but not impossible. Large raptors like condors and eagles can soar for long periods using thermal currents, but they still need to flap regularly to maintain altitude. The creature described by witnesses seems capable of sustained hovering, which would require either exceptional wing efficiency or some other mechanism. He suggested the possibility of an unknown species adapted to urban environments, taking advantage of heat rising from buildings and pavement. But he also acknowledged this was pure speculation. Without a specimen, alive or dead, there is no way to study its biology or behavior. What was it? Where did it come from? Is it still out there, watching from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself again? If you found this story intriguing, let us know in the comments what you think the creature might be. Have you ever seen something you couldn't explain? Share your experiences, and don't forget to subscribe for more mysteries that linger at the edge of the known world.